Hello all, and welcome back to another episode of TV and Us, a conversation show about the TV series we just can't stop talking about. My name is Jennifer Hahn.
And I'm Sarah Callan.
Each season we focus on a different show, reviewing it episode by episode, and we invite you to watch along with us. Right now we are reviewing The Last of Us Season 1, and today we're on episode 4, titled, Please Hold to My Hand. If you haven't watched yet, this is your spoiler alert. Please check it out before continuing to listen to the rest of this episode. Okay, so Sarah, kick us off with an episode summary for this 4th episode.
After abandoning their truck in Kansas City, Joel and Ellie attempt to escape without drawing the attention of a vindictive rebel leader.
Okay, and in TV and Us tradition, let's start off with our episode titles for this 4th episode. What's yours?
Mine is No Wanderin'.
Yeah. Could get you in trouble.
Yeah, real quick.
Yes. Okay, my episode title is Diarrhea.
Did you know that it runs in families? Did you know it's hereditary?
Oh, I love it. Okay, well, let's dive right in. Tell me some of your thoughts about this 4th episode. We are nearing the halfway point of the season, which is crazy. After we watch episode 5, we'll be fully past the halfway point. But tell me your thoughts about this 4th episode.
Yeah, Joel and Ellie back on the road. You know, we are making progress toward our goal. And then in true, I don't know, dystopian universe fashion, we run into some people who take us a little bit off course. And so, you know, along the way, we also learn more about Joel and his character. There's a couple character revealing moments. And then we also get some new information about Ellie and her past and maybe some of the stuff that she's gone through, but she's not quite ready to open up yet. And then episode ends on a cliffhanger. So you have to come back and you have to watch the next episode to find out what is going to happen. So I think all in all, it's a solid episode. We make progress. We got some character development going on, and it, you know, just invites you back for some more. We need to know what happens. We need to know who these new people are and what is up with this feud in Kansas City.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the things that we were talking about at the end of our previous episode was really hoping to see some unsavory characters that are part of the chaos that is the open city. And we get that. I love just the way that, you know, episode 3 was such a sentimental, deeply emotional, sweet episode about the best parts of human nature. And, you know, we take a full pendulum swing, riding it all the way to the other side to see just the other side of the way that anarchy has broken out in this area. And so I kind of love that we've got that full spectrum and kind of the emotional whiplash going from episode 3 to episode 4 is really fascinating. We get the full spectrum of humanity.
Yeah, I appreciate that we don't go from this like really heartfelt emotional episode into a really like violent, gruesome episode either. You know, we're just traveling with these two for a good chunk of it. And Ellie is saying terrible puns all throughout. And we're seeing this bond between these characters grow. So there's a lot of emotion in this episode. And there's some action too. It's the emotion that then like eases us back into the action. So I think that that's really smart from like a structuring perspective, that we don't immediately go from this like gut punch, really beautiful, emotional episode into like all out war. We had to, you know, take our time getting into some action. So I'm curious to see what episode 5 is going to be like, and what maybe like action or more tense or dangerous elements might come in episode 5 now that we're a little more primed for it.
Yes, I had that same feeling about this episode, in that it feels like the kind of preparation for something that naturally makes sense to fall in kind of the halfway point of the season. But this really felt like the priming episode. We get to learn about a bunch of the new people and personalities in this city. We hear about and learn about some other characters that we haven't met yet until the end of the episode with Henry. And so the kind of like game board has been opened up, the pieces have been placed, and I feel like we're gearing up for some juicy action or just like plot development that's going to happen pretty significantly. I'm thinking in episode 5, because episode 4 feels like the appetizer for a full meal that's to come.
Yeah, and also just creating kind of intrigue, but creating intrigue about this new group of people, because they even mention it. They're not Fedra, they're not Fireflies. So this is a different group, and even within that, there's Henry and Sam, and then there's everybody else. And so to see some new potential players in this is interesting, because it had just been kind of positioned as, the government is, the, I don't know, the empire, and then the Fireflies are the rebellion. And okay, you're either with the empire or you're with the rebellion. That's it. That's all we got. And then we're seeing that that's not quite the case. That may have been the case in the Boston QZ, but now that we're venturing forth into these other cities, we're seeing that other dynamics exist. And so it'll be interesting to kind of explore those and see where allegiances lie, and then how these characters kind of brush up against each other.
Yeah, I think in our first episode, we talked about there being kind of like 3 variables at play here. We've got Fedra, we've got the Fireflies, and we've got Joel and Tess, and now Ellie. And it really feels like the game board has gotten far more complex now. We have like 5 variables, arguably. We've got those 3, and now we have this like seemingly anarchist group or unknown group, but there's like a lot of aggression and violence that they are just unafraid of carrying out, which is notable. And then we got Henry and his little brother, and wondering like, where do their loyalties lie? Are they with the Fireflies, or are they just kind of outlaws trying to figure it out and just survive in this environment? So it's fun to see all of the different dynamics play out here. And I just love that the show is taking its sweet time. I kind of love that we are on episode 4. We're nearly at the halfway point, and it feels like our journey is just beginning. And the show's not looking to rush through to get to this big long journey and to then find Tommy and then give us like a ton of these big action sequences with the infected beings. Like, the show's really restrained, and while still entertaining us and prompting our thoughts to think about all of these different themes and ways that human beings are looking to survive here. So I love the way that the show is indulging and taking its time as it progresses this plot. It really feels like we're just beginning.
Yeah, because they've just left Boston. They finally made it to a different city, and I'm a little surprised at how little we've seen infected people. Like, with the exception of that second episode where we get to see just how crazy cool they look, we really haven't seen too many of them, because in episode 3 there aren't any, and I don't think there are in this episode. There's something going on with the ground, which is really interesting. But the infected, while they are present and their presence is felt, they are a danger to our characters, they aren't a main focus, which I think is interesting. It's always kind of in the back of your mind, and that's the reason why Ellie is the important cargo that they are moving across the country. But we don't encounter them in every episode. They're not, I don't know, they're just not always lurking about. And I find that interesting, that so many of these episodes have been focused on people and how people cope with difficult circumstances, the human will to survive, and how that changes social dynamics and the way that groups look and the way that we organize ourselves so that we can continue living. the show seems at this point to be more interested in that rather than exploring this fungus that has infected the entire world. And I think that that's just a really interesting creative choice.
Yes, it's so fun. It's so thought-provoking too, while still being so entertaining. And the show doesn't shy away from giving us the like tension, nail-biting sequences that are so exciting. But I love how much, like you mentioned, the show is so interested in like thinking about all of the different things that come out of us as human beings as we are as we're dealing with arguably the most pressurized type of circumstances that we could imagine as a human. You know, there's that storytelling bit around like take our character and put them in increasingly difficult situations and apply pressure and see what comes out. And that's revealing of who they truly are. And even if that looks different from their outside exterior that we first met them with, like that is most interesting to us as viewers to see. And I think that this show is doing just that. It's taking literally every character that's in the most extreme condition and pressing them and seeing what choices will they make. You know, how will they be self-sacrificial or self-preserving? How will they organize themselves, and will they lean into the propensity for aggression and violence against their fellow man, or will they choose to band together and fight for a larger purpose? It's so great. And the show is really this like series of meditations on human nature, which is just so unexpected. I was here for some like really fun, entertaining sequences of action, and I feel like I'm getting a whole feast.
And I think this show is demonstrating, you know, the beauty of a genre like sci-fi, or honestly even horror. Like these genre stories, obviously it's cool world building, it's cool creatures, you know, all of that is super fun, but at its heart they're really great vehicles to get us to think about our world and how we show up in it, you know, especially when the world is different enough from our own that we are able to contemplate some things, and we're able to see what's going on the screen and go, that doesn't feel quite right. And then we can have kind of the reflection to go, oh wait, that's maybe a little bit similar to our context. Let's think about this a little bit more deeply. And I feel like The Last of Us is really good at using the genre and using this premise to get us to think about some of these deeper themes that are incredibly relevant to us today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's also, as for us as the viewers, helping us like invest so deeply in these characters because we see them in all of these extreme contexts, but we're seeing their true nature emerge so quickly, so efficiently, you know? And I just remember before watching the show, seeing everyone and their mother on the internet raving about just falling in love with Pedro Pascal's character. And I get it. First of all, makes yes, absolutely. But then two, because we see them in such extreme conditions, like the apocalypse, like this like non close to reality type of context, that every choice that they make feels like there's just so much more like stakes and meaning to it, you know? Like I think that's a fascinating aspect of how quickly almost the character connection is able to be built between the viewers and our characters because they're in extreme context. So every decision feels big and weighty because it means like life or death in this context. It's not just a small moment of altruism in a very real world feeling context, but no, this is like, I chose to give my life for you. You know, we talk about this with episode 2 with Tess. And I think that's what's exciting too about these genre stories, and especially environments that seem so different and so much more extreme than our real world today, is that the character building and the character connection is able to be built very quickly.
Mm-hmm. And I'm appreciating how this show is doing that. You know, we get to know little bits about both Joel and Ellie as they're building their relationship together. You know, I think it was so smart that they were so skeptical of each other and really hated each other to begin with. They were like, I don't have time for you. And over the course of these episodes, there's that warming effect, and they're starting to warm up to each other. They're starting to share little bits about themselves with each other. I mean, you're trapped with this person on a multi-hour journey in very tense moments. Of course, you're going to start to want to confide in them and want to build that relationship. And I like how natural that all feels. You know, when you meet somebody for the first time, you're not automatically just going to tell them your whole life story. I mean, I guess some people might, but that's not normally how humans work. And in this show, we're seeing that as well, where they're just little by little sharing pieces of themselves. And I think this episode is really pivotal because Joel goes first and he has this really vulnerable moment with Ellie, and he apologizes to her. He apologizes very badly, but he does it. And that moment of vulnerability really opens the door for her then to also be vulnerable. And so I love that. If that scene had come a couple episodes ago, it wouldn't have felt right. It would have been too early. But this just feels right given everything these two have gone through. Now they are finally able to open up and start to really build that bond with each other.
Yes, absolutely. And I love that the moment of like warmth where we see Joel laugh for the first time on the show, just like a deep guttural laugh with Ellie as they're falling asleep at the very end of the episode. I love that that comes after the vulnerable moment where he chooses to apologize and build that bond with Ellie earlier, a few scenes earlier in the episode. You know, like so that moment of connection and warmth and silliness that they get to experience as they're going to bed at the end of the episode feels so earned because they did the hard work to build trust. And you know, that ability to laugh so easily, we know has been hard for Joel throughout his journey, and then he's been hardened by so much. But that only can happen when you feel safety and you feel trust with a person. And so I love that this really important emotional character moment happens earlier where he chooses to apologize and they build a connection and they have that moment of vulnerability. And then the byproduct and the after effects is this really sweet moment that the two of them share as they're going to bed. So I love how much that feels so earned.
I love that it's all set up because this whole episode, Ellie has just been cracking terrible jokes and she's having so much fun doing it. And it's that little kid thing that I feel like we lose as adults. And, you know, when kids are having fun, they're just going to keep having fun. And I love that she doesn't let Joel's, I don't know, his walls and his refusal to engage with her in that silliness, she doesn't let that stop her from being silly. And she's going to keep bringing that to the table. And eventually that allows him to also be silly. And I thought that was such a beautiful setup for all of that. Like it's helpful for us because it's lighthearted, it's fun. You know, we just went through this very emotional episode, so we need something a little lighter, but it's not levity just for levity's sake, but it is working its way toward that purpose of revealing more about who these characters are and deepening their connection through humor.
Yes. And then we get another emotional whiplash after where, you know, like, oh, sweet little moment. They're falling asleep. They're being silly together. And then boom, you wake up at gunpoint. And it's a great last shot, a cliffhanger moment as we head into the next episode. So that whole sequence of the last, 10 minutes of this episode is really, really great.
Yeah, well, it was when I was watching and then Joel starts laughing and having fun. My first thought was like, well, all right, you're going to be in danger now. Something bad is going to happen next.
Yeah, it's too good.
You can't have fun in this show. Come on, get it together, Joel.
Yep. Well, and especially because I love the moment where Ellie shares that she has noticed that he doesn't hear as well from his right side. I thought that was really, really fascinating to like understand Ellie's like keen observation of her environments, even and she doesn't share all of them. So you're just wondering like what else has she noticed? But he continues to go to bed with his right ear up, his left ear on the pillow. And you're like, this is not setting us up for success, is it? No?
Also, like, I don't know, man.
Flip your mat.
Sleeping in a whole open room right in front of the door where you're clearly visible and can be clearly seen. Like, there are some better options here if you would truly like to hide while you sleep. You could also set up additional traps or warning signs, because you shouldn't ever just set up the one, because they could get around the one. Like, I'm just like, Joel, buddy, can we talk
Yep.
about this? I know you're sleep deprived. I know you're exhausted. I know you've been through a lot, but like, there are other options available to you, my man.
Yep. Let's conceal ourselves a little
fine.
bit at least.
Right?
Yep.
Nope. We're just going to be out here in the open. It's fine.
Okay, other big things from this episode that we wanted to mention.
I'm really impressed that, you know, this whole like gun business with Ellie. She takes a gun from Bill's house without Joel knowing, after Joel has said, no, you're not gonna have a gun for so long. And she, without hesitation, really, I mean, she thinks about it for like half a second, but she brings that gun out in a time when it was needed. And Joel doesn't get angry. He doesn't yell at her. He doesn't beat her up for disobeying the rules. Like, I really appreciate how Joel handled that. And it's so different than I would have expected from a TV show or a movie. And instead, that's when he apologizes, and he takes that time to show her, you know, adjust her grip on the gun and all of that. But it's so much kinder and softer than I expected, especially from this, you know, dystopian action show. In that moment of stress, he was mostly concerned about her and her well-being as opposed to her rebelling. And I thought that was really telling.
Yes, that's so good. Yeah, we learned so much about Joel in this episode. And like we were talking about earlier, a character's pressed, you know, in this moment of a high intensity, a high tension. That is his natural instinct. Do you know what I mean? Like he doesn't have time to think about how to react, but this is what comes out is just he is concerned for this young girl who he feels like is having to grow up so much faster and see so much that she shouldn't be seeing at her age. And his empathy for her is so big. And I feel like we got to see smaller moments of that in previous episodes, you know, like when they're traversing their path. I think it's in episode 3 at the beginning. And he essentially says like, we shouldn't go this way. There's some things that you shouldn't see. And she continues to barrel on forward, and they see the pile of bones, and just kind of that, obviously in that context, he's thinking about her and wanting to protect her from these things. But it says so much more that even in this highly intense environment, that's his first instinct is also really beautiful to see. I think that's also paired with, you know, we learn about him in the beginning of the episode in their conversation in the car about how Joel feels about the Fireflies. And he's got like this intense cynicism about them and believing that what they're fighting for is really just a pipe dream. And there's so much bitterness in the way that he talks about it that you got to just know and deduce that at one point he really believed in this, you know, and he's been burned by it. You know, no one talks about something at that level of emotion and intensity without feeling some type of way about it. You know, he's not just like, yeah, they're fighting for some things, but I don't know. There's so much emotion there that, you know, that he has such a complicated relationship with the mission of the Fireflies. And it just seems to insinuate that at some point in his life, like he really fought for something here too. And it just failed him or has disappointed him. And so I'm intrigued to just hear more about his backstory, but I thought that was really fascinating too.
And we also learn more about his relationship with Tommy. And I found that also to be really interesting, how Joel feels this, what I, as an outsider who does not know a lot of information, feels like an outsized need to protect his brother. And just as Joel was sharing about like all of the ways that he tried to protect Tommy, tried to help Tommy, all the things, it's kind of like, wow, what is fueling that need for you to be your brother's protector? So I think there's something deeper there. And it's just interesting that we've seen Joel in these different contexts, and he wasn't able to protect Sarah, he wasn't able to protect Tess, he has tried to protect Tommy with mixed success, and now he's on this journey to trying to protect Ellie to get her to a location. So that's just an interesting thing that we learned a little bit more about, and I'm very curious about that Joel Tommy relationship, and if we'll learn a little bit more about what is causing that need that Joel has to save his brother constantly. Like, what is that? You don't have to be the savior, Joel. I promise you. We can do something else. Tommy will be fine. So I'm curious to see how that's going to play out over the next few episodes.
Yeah. They're classic, like older sibling, younger sibling stereotypes being fulfilled.
Right?
Yeah, he just feels this like outsized giant responsibility to take care of like everyone and anyone. It's really fascinating to see. Okay. Shall we give us some TVNS awards?
Sure.
All right.
Yeah.
So the first category is for Scrappiest Survivor. What is your choice?
I want to give this to Henry for evading capture for so long in a confined environment with a whole child in tow. Like, that's impressive.
I can't wait to learn about this character.
Oh, me too.
I'm so excited. My choice for this is also to Henry for being scrappy with creating art, even in the apocalypse. The superhero drawings that they do on cardboard just are so endearing, so sweet. And then to see the paint on the little boy, his little brother's face as he like tells Joel to shush, really, really great. So the ability for them to have art, even in such dire circumstances, is really cool.
I love it. And I'm hoping we'll see more in that next episode about like, what it means to be a kid and like whimsy and all of that, because we've seen moments of that from Ellie. So are we going to see moments of that maybe from Sam? I don't know. We'll see. We'll find out in the next episode.
Yeah. And I mean, like in such an extreme context, like that is part of survival. Like whimsy is survival, like how do you make this bearable when it is so just absolutely grating on you day in and day out of your context? You just got to lean into whimsy to make it somewhat bearable and fun, and that for the human spirit to survive, really. And I love the way that they are choosing to lean into that and to use that as their motivation or their will to continue to go on. Is like, we are superheroes fighting against the forces of evil in this crazy environment. It's such a fascinating way that these two are figuring out how to survive.
Mm-hmm. We love to see it. They are the scrappiest survivors and the scrappiest superheroes in this show.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. Next category is grittiest moment. What is your choice?
I'm choosing when Joel is trying to find the words to deal with the magazine that Ellie finds in Bill's truck.
Oh, so good. It's so good. I love how much she is like sometimes 5 steps ahead of him and he has no idea. And he's just trying to keep up with her. It's so great. My choice for this is basically anything in that truck. Anything that's getting pulled out of the backseat pockets. Gritty as hell.
Honestly, though, I was like, oh no, what is she going to find next?
Okay, the next category is Straight Shooter Award. What is your choice?
I want to give this to Ellie when she says about the coffee, smells like burnt shit.
Yes. I love it. I love it. Yeah. Like she's never experienced one of every episode, I feel like there's something that we get to learn that Ellie has not experienced, but has some thoughts to
Mhm.
share, some opinions to
Yes.
share with the world. That was a great one. My choice for this category is when Joel says to Ellie in the car, "You're cargo."
Yes. Oh, it's so good.
All right. Well, looking ahead, what are you excited to see in the next episode, squarely in the center of this season, episode 5? What are you excited to see?
Yeah, I'm curious to learn more about this feud in Kansas City. What are these two factions? And I mean, really, it's Henry and Sam versus literally everyone else. So I want to know more about Henry and Sam, and I'm curious to see how those two may become
Yeah.
guides in a way for Joel and Ellie, because I mean, it is an adult and a child trying to survive. And so I'm curious to see what wisdom Henry might be able to share with Joel as he's navigating this very difficult circumstance. And I'm also curious what is going on under the ground in that one building.
Hmm.
What's with that? What does that mean? Are we going to bomb some fungus that's growing under the ground? I'm very curious. I would like to know more information about that.
Yes. I am so curious about what's in the storage room. It was such a great moment and a great visual. And the kind of right-hand man, I think his name's Perry, seems to disagree with Kathleen's judgment on that too. So I'm intrigued to see like how they manage that situation, because it seems to be a threat to literally like their entire community. And so his desire to protect his community might override his desire to be obedient to his boss. And I'm just intrigued to see some of the like human nature stuff that comes out there, because he clearly seems to be disapproving of the way that she chooses to respond to that. So that'll be fun to see. Hopefully we see play out. My gosh, fungus growing there feels terrifying, but it is like a whole monster down there. I'm excited to see, obviously, to learn more about Henry and his little brother. They don't have a truck now, Joel and Ellie. So I'm like, what? How are we going to continue our journey? Because the truck's tires are completely slashed. So it's going to be a much longer journey for us to get to our destination in Wyoming. Other things, I am so intrigued about like what Phaedrus military school is like, because Ellie clearly has been steeped and raised in it. And so I'm just intrigued to learn more about that. The show might not be interested in giving me that and just might like reference it here and there, but it's so interesting to think about how much she's wired based on concepts and ethoses and ideas and training that she's received there. So I'm just like intrigued to know more about that. She puts her gun in her jacket side pocket instead of listening to Joel's instructions to put it in her backpack. And we saw that come into handy in a key moment in this episode. So I'm just intrigued to see what they do there, because she very intentionally, and they shoot it very intentionally to show that she's got it much closer at the ready than in her backpack. So what will happen in episode 5 where she needs to pull that thing out again?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Hey, man, if you start ready, you don't need to get ready. So Ellie is ready to go.
She is.
We're going to see what happens.
Yep. Yep. So lots of questions. We are here to find out. The journey continues. All right.
Absolutely. Let's go. Let's get, I guess the other question.
Yeah.
Okay. So we made it from Boston to Kansas City. The next episode, I guess, is going to be in Kansas City. But where do we think we're going to go after Kansas City? Is there going to be another
detour
stop before we get to Wyoming? Are we going to like zoom forward in the story and get to Wyoming? Where are we going next? What is our next step on the journey? And like you mentioned, now they don't have a truck. So this should be interesting.
Mm-hmm. It's so interesting. Like I am so just intrigued by every step of the way of this journey that I'm so fine if the show just like we never get to Wyoming. Like we make it to the end of season 1 and like we're back in Boston again, got to start our journey all over again, because there's so much to explore city to city, different types of people, different types of infected beings, that once we get to Wyoming, the show just has to come up with a compelling new mission and a new premise. And like, that's not why I'm here. I'm like here for just like them coming up on stumbling blocks along the way and then having to figure it out and problem solve and then stumbling upon some new colorful personalities. Obviously, they can't drag that out for forever, but I'm fine if the show indulges in that journey for a long time.
I think I would maybe be okay with that in like certain circumstances. I would need them to achieve a goal.
Mm-hmm.
I can't just have like more meandering.
Yep.
All the side quests are cool. They're super fun. We get to meet new people. I'm down for that. But like they need to have achieved something or they get to Wyoming and like Tommy isn't there or the fireflies aren't there, so they have to go to a next place. I would be okay with that. Yes. But I need an accomplishment, like enough of an accomplishment to feel like I haven't wasted what will end up being 9 hours of my life. But that's just me, because I am the way that I am, and I'm sorry. So yeah, I'm just curious to see where this goes and kind of like what other side quests will go on and what other cities we might encounter along the way.
Yep. I would just like to delay, maybe what it is really is like Joel joining up with the Fireflies inherently pushes this story into a different conflict, a different dynamic, in that they're like fighting against the Empire. And I think that we've seen this happen in like the Hunger Games series, where like the most interesting parts is actually 1 and 2, not when they get to the third installment where we're now fighting a big war against the Empire. Like that is a story that we've seen play out a gajillion times, of like a rebel alliance and he becomes a leader and then they fight against the big bad people in power. Like I think what's more interesting is seeing this full spectrum and flavors of people along the way. And like he's growing, obviously he needs to be growing as a character, but if we can delay the whole like Joel becoming a leader of the resistance bit, or just avoid that entirely and do something different with the story, I would do that. Like, let's not do that, please.
Oh yeah, no. I don't want to see Joel as the leader of the resistance. Joel is not Katniss Everdeen. That's just not it. We need Joel to just find his brother and then just go live on a ranch in Wyoming.
Yes.
Like that's kind of, I think, the best case scenario for that character.
Do the Mad Max thing. You like you come, you help him out, you serve, but ultimately like it's right for the character, like it is for Max, to like disappear into the crowd at the end of Fury Road, because he's not here to set up a new society. That's not right for this character. Watch me eat my words later and be like so invested in him as the leader of the resistance. But for now, I'm like, no, this is not who he is.
No, I'm with you. I just want to see Joel just go off into the sunset on a horse, just in a rural part of the country, living a quiet life. Yeah, that's it. He doesn't need to be part of this bigger thing.
Yep. Agreed.
That just feels right for that character who has suffered so much. Like, I just want him to experience a little bit of peace in his life, whatever that might look like for him.
Yep. Yeah. Peace would be great.
We'll see. We'll see what the show has in store. We got a few episodes left. Our minds might change.
It really might. That's the thing. Like the show can do anything, and if it's good, I would just follow it to the ends of the earth. All right. Well, this is our review discussion of episode 4. You can find it available on Max. Thank you for listening to today's episode of TV and Us. Our name sums it up. We're big fans of TV and the powerful ways we can connect with each other and the world around us. This podcast is about all of us and our shared stories. So everyone is welcome here, and we're so glad you spent time with us today as we continued our journey through The Last of Us Season 1. You can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you tune to your favorite shows. Drop us a rating and review, letting us know your thoughts about episode 4. You can connect with us on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at TBNSPod, or email us at tbnspod@gmail.com. We will be back soon to discuss episode 5 of this season. We hope you have a wonderful week, and we'll talk again with y'all very soon.